Hey everyone, welcome to week 8. We are more than halfway through the semester, and I hope you guys are doing well. Hang in there, you got this. We're almost there. The finish line is in sight, hence finish line, why we're on the finish line today. I know you guys can do it. If you have any problems, if you have any questions, come and see me. Monday mornings I'm here on the racetrack running a couple laps, so I'd love for you to join me. So Chapter 8 was about working with tenants, and I have to admit, this is one of the most difficult parts of property management, working with tenants and clients, as well as vendors and repairs, lease negotiations. This is very difficult. Tenants are difficult. It's not only do they want what they want now, they're also interfacing with some of these issues that they bring to you on a daily basis. So it's something that's very personal to them and something that they're working with every day that we should be addressing as soon as we can, once we're presented or made aware of certain issues that are concerns with the tenants. Not to say that some of these things could be quite ridiculous. So I know it's difficult when you get called out to fix the key stuck in the door or to replace light bulbs. What they're looking for is your response time, how you're concerned with the issues at hand, and that you're taking into account their concerns seriously. Trying to get them to understand that you have multiple other issues going on, multiple other concerns, multiple other issues you need to address in a priority order is something that you must address as soon as possible with the tenant. This lets them know that your time is also valuable and should be respected. Prioritizing the issues as they are presented to you is something that you must also express to them. I have a method of tenants presenting the information or concerns or repair requests online, so they know exactly how they are in order, how they're being addressed, if it's being investigated, if they have somebody being sent out to the property for their concerns, or if there needs to be a property manager on site to inspect the property and the issue at hand first. So that's something that I've found has been very helpful with this property management software. They can directly report the information or the problems they're having. They can pay rent. They can do a lease negotiation right there. These software programs are amazing. So I really recommend that you do look into that. I have a friend who, speaking of working with tenants, has a clause in her lease with her tenants that whenever there's a concern with the property, that her clause says the tenant must pay or must address these concerns if the value of this issue is less than $50 or less. It prevents her from going out to multiple properties for silly things like light bulb or battery replacements on a carbon monoxide detector. So it's a great thing for her because it's a time saver. However, I do have a couple of issues with that. That being that you as a property manager have the obligation to your tenants to make sure that they have the habitability issue with their property, that if this issue is less than $50, it is still your concern and your problem to address this issue regardless of its value. So even if it's a small little simple repair, if it's something considering the direct habitability of a residential property and whether or not they can inhabit the property, you need to address that. There's some major issues in the Senate bills going through, whereas how property managers can evict tenants right now, and whether or not you have just cause to do that. You, as a property manager, currently have just cause to not renew a tenant agreement with a tenant if you're going to be selling the property, or if you have a family member moving into the property, or if you yourself will be moving into the property. However, they were going to be readdressing those concerns in a later time as of January 1st to see if that is actual just cause. The tenants normally have more rights than landlords do when it comes to renewing the lease negotiation, whether or not they're going to be renewing. If they find something else, or if they want to move, that is completely up to them. As a landlord, you cannot disagree with that. You can try your best to retain them, and it is definitely more cost effective to do so than the issues of marketing your property and your time and your management to look for a new tenant. So creating strong tenant relations is very important in working with tenants. Welcoming them, walking through the property with them, addressing any issues that are current before their actual move-in. Then upon their move-in, addressing any issues throughout the course of their lease. And when they do eventually move out, doing a closing walkthrough with them. If there's any issues with the property or anything you need to take out of the security deposit for any concerns or repairs. So tenants have the right of quiet enjoyment of the property. This is something that is a non-contested right. You cannot bug them over silly things other than what's on your contract, whether it be rent due or a breach of contract, or if they're doing something illegal in the property. That is something that you as a property manager do have the right to address when you're talking with your tenants. So make sure that you do follow up with any concerns that they bring to you in a timely manner. You do want to keep these tenants long term. It's expensive to maintain, however, new negotiations are more expensive. Now, the eviction notice. I know what you guys want to hear. You want to say, hey, how do I evict these tenants? They're not very nice, or they don't get along with other people, or they're just pains in the rear end. How do I get these people out of my property? That's the difficult part. You have to show some kind of notification or some kind of issue that they have either breached their contract or not been paying the rent or doing something illegal on the property. And that eviction process is called unlawful detainer action. You cannot, as a property manager, self-help to evict them by shutting off the power, shutting off the water, like in Pacific Heights, Michael Keaton. No, you cannot do that, unfortunately. They will prosecute you legally, and guess who's going to win? Not you. So the first thing that you would do when people are late on rent is give them the notification. If they are still late on rent, then you start charging your late fees, right? Depending on your contract, whether it's a straight fee or whether it's a percentage on each day that they're late. If they still don't pay, what's your first step? Well, your first step is to the notice for cure or quit. And that doesn't mean quit your lease, because, if the tenant walks out on your lease, you have legal ramifications as a property owner to go after the tenant for the contractual lease. But what it is, it's also known as a 3-day notice, which is you have 3 days to pay. Otherwise, we will take additional steps for you to be evicted from this property. So let's say 3 days go by. What's our next step? What do we do? Well, then we're going to file the unlawful detainer. And depending on the amount of rent that is due, you would file that in either small claims or superior court. So I believe if it's under $5,000, you're going to go to small claims. Anything over that is in superior court. So depending if it's a large commercial rent or if it's multiple months of residential is where you're going to be filing your claim. Then you're going to have your hearing, and after that, let's say the judge votes in your favor because you have a whole bunch of unpaid rent due and they're still living there. They're going to give you an eviction notice. So that means the tenant has absolute last day eviction notice clearly written on that notice that they have to leave the premises by that date. So if not, the sheriff will be there, and you make sure to make that call with the sheriff. Say, I have an eviction notice. I would like to evict these tenants on this date. Please meet me at this property at this time. And what they will do is they will be there to basically keep the peace. They will not usually forcefully evict tenants, although I have seen issues in that circumstance. So let's say they leave the premises now, all right? You have your eviction, you have them off the premises, but they leave a whole bunch of their things. What do you do then as a property manager? Do you get to sell the property? No, you have to keep it in storage at your own expense for at least 3 months. Pretty crazy, right? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, that is a requirement. If they come back for their property, they have a right to it and you can give them back their property. You can request the payment for the storage at that time, or you can take them to court again for the payment of those storage units. However, those fees will be incurred by you. You have to have some kind of just cause for this type of termination of the agreement. Either that be no rent, illegal activity in the property, that they haven't received any quiet enjoyment of the property, or they have damages. And if they have damages, you should be taking it out of the security deposit, first and last month rent, if you have that. If not, you have to start measures to get that property damages back to you financially through the court action. If the property is foreclosed upon, let's say you haven't been able to make the mortgage payments, that is the right for a termination, because basically their termination of their lease will be terminated upon the foreclosure of the property. Let's say you have tenants that want to live in the property and you like them better than the current tenants. Can you evict them? No, you cannot. I have had to go through this process a couple of times, and each time it is no fun. It is emotionally draining. It is financially draining. And a lot of times the judge doesn't always rule in one person in particular's favor. A lot of times they split the damages or the issues right down the middle, and each person is not happy. So it's very difficult issues to address. I've had a property out of state where in the Midwest you have to winterize your property. And when you winterize your property, you're basically wrapping all the pipes, you're shutting all the windows, you're turning off the heat to a certain temperature, making sure that you're keeping this property good for the winter. Well, I had a tenant who we went through this whole eviction process, and he was forced to leave the premises. Luckily, he left the premises vacant, so there was no personal property. But he was not happy that he was evicted. So during the winter months, when this property was winterized, he managed to crack open a window, put the garden hose through the window, turn on the water very slowly as a trickle so nobody would notice. And what happens to water in the winter in the Midwest? Yep, it freezes. So the whole basement had about a foot of water of frozen solid ice. That was no fun to clean up, I tell you what. That was so expensive to mitigate that I will never do it again. So being out of state now, I find it very difficult to manage properties where you're not in the direct vicinity. You can go and visit that property immediately. So just a couple of my 2 cents. I will see you guys next week. Good luck. Hang in there.